Hi everybody, welcome back to the stream. Where's my camera here? There we go. Epistemologicide, good to see you. I'm starting early tonight. We're not going to wait for anybody to dive into the chat. We're just going to jump right into this. Makigumos, good to see you. Our intro tonight is brought to us by Sarah and Dorian from Do Not Research, this game called What's Your Truth? I would really love to have a chance to play this. We're just watching the 1-minute trailer tonight, but this was published on DNR, part of the most recent issue. Where are we? Okay, we are doing the lobby part 3 and 4 this week. If you were not here last week, we watched part 1 and 2 of the lobby. As the title suggests here, this is the film the Israel lobby doesn't want you to see. This was a series produced by Al Jazeera in 2018. Am I correct about that? Made during 2016, completed in October 2017. I believe the uploads are from 2018, if that is, yeah, November 2018. So that's when they were released. Now, this is the American analog of the version of the documentary. There was a British version that aired to the public, the Lobby UK. This is the Lobby USA, and we've been watching part 1 and part 2. I'm going to go over a few brief notes recapping what we learned in episodes 1 and 2. I feel like just subjectively, the smoking gun that I expected to see in this documentary, AJ, good to see you. Good to see you, Earth Crisis Hoodie, people coming on in as we start the stream. I expected something a little bit more like a smoking gun. I'll just run through some of my notes here. The AIPAC campaign finance violations, where they would muddy the donors. If people contributed over the legal limit, whatever that happens to be, I think it's $2,700 or $2,800, I forget the exact number, they would then divide that donation up amongst multiple people at the event. So if someone wanted to contribute $5,000 perhaps, which would technically be illegal, they could say, in the context of this dinner, I give you a $2,500 gift because my personal contribution is exceeded, and now you can give that money. So this creates a pathway for very wealthy individuals to have outsized weight and influence onto the political process. I mean, maybe I'm just too much of a skeptic, but I feel like that level of dirty dealings is just, that's what everybody does, how all of politics works. I mean, they said this just about as much for Jeb Bush. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that a lot of the clips, a lot of the hidden camera footage that we saw in part 1 and 2 was in the context of young professionals at events. People, in some cases, meeting up for a casual dinner, but in other cases, meeting up for professional networking events. And they're drinking alcohol. They're kind of bragging about how accomplished they are in their positions. So I felt like, you know, just giving all the counter narratives, being good narrators here, that potentially some of the people are embellishing their claims. But it does seem extremely clear that basically all of the NGOs they talk to work directly with the Israeli government on a daily basis. Like that, not even contested, just direct organization day to day with these government entities. The one thing that we covered in depth that I think is indisputable and unjustifiable is the smearing of student activists that would post onto social media in support of Palestine. Canary Mission, which is the website that we're looking here. This was covered in episode, was it 1 or 2? I think maybe it was 1, and then they talked about it a little bit more in 2. But this was supposed to be, I mean, I think this is the biggest takeaway from the thing, that this is entirely funded by one individual billionaire Zionist donor who they name in this. His name is eluding me right now. Should we do a quick search? Canary Mission. Okay, Adam Milstein is the multimillionaire funder and mastermind of Canary Mission. So this website, which purports to be a nonprofit organization, is... Let's pull up an example. I searched my own name on it last week, but many of these are like adjunct professors or student activists, people who make a post onto social media. And then what Canary Mission does as a website is it makes an entire, in many cases, they are affiliated with BDS, Boycott, Divestments, and Sanctions Against the State of Israel. And they put up a website about these people, saying that they are just the most vile, scum of the earth, horrible people. Don't hire them at your organization, blacklist them from public life. And, you know, these allegations go a long ways in some cases. Certainly they affect people as they enter the labor market, students who've just recently graduated college and now they're looking for jobs. They don't have much of a CV, much less a Google search history. You type in their name and then you find Canary Mission describes this person as a, you know, terrible, horrible anti-Semite and so on. So yeah, those are my very quick notes. I'm going to be brief at the top of the stream. We are watching part 3 and then we're going to watch part 4. Has nobody tried hacking this website? I'm sure someone has tried to hack it, but not that I'm aware of. Okay, so we're going to hold the commentary for much of tonight. Part 3 is 50 minutes and part 4 is 49, just about the same. So we're going to watch these straight through. I'll give a little bit of commentary and context as people come in, but I think let's just dive right in at the top of the stream, be efficient with our time tonight.
Previously on the Lobby USA, our undercover reporter revealed tactics used against supporters of Palestinian equal rights.
You have to show that they're racist hate groups and to consistently portray them that way.
Tony is being recruited to work undercover for the lobby.
It's a hostile environment and there's some risk involved.
His assignment? To investigate people on a blacklist drawn up by a website called Canary Mission.
It's an anonymous site. Nobody has any idea who's actually running this thing, and people have tried and looked into it.
In the third of a 4-part series, personal attacks, smears on anonymous websites, how sections of the pro-Israel lobby use unscrupulous means to discredit supporters of Palestinian civil rights.
The cliffhanger, last thing for context, the cliffhanger we were left on in the last episode, Tony, who is the undercover investigative reporter for Al Jazeera, who is infiltrating these Zionist organizations in DC. This is the skinny guy that we were looking at earlier. He has now been selected to be a double agent on behalf of, I forget the Zionist organization, but they are asking him to infiltrate a Palestinian student activist group. So it's about to get very, very complicated here. That was the cliffhanger we saw at the end of episode 2.
Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit infiltrates one of the most powerful lobbies in the world.
Getting $38 billion in security aid to Israel matters, which is what AIPAC is doing.
We examine how the lobby, led by AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, has secured unwavering support in Congress.
Congressmen don't do anything unless you pressure them. And the only way to do that is with money.
What the lobby is all about is to make sure that Israel gets special treatment from the United States forever.
But after occupying Palestinian lands for half a century, the pro-Israel lobby is facing a new challenge.
We called for a full boycott of Israel, divesting from it, and eventually imposing sanctions on it to achieve UN-stipulated rights of the Palestinian people.
A movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel, BDS, was formed on American campuses.
It seems to be achieving its goals. It threatens future American support for Israel.
We believe in justice for all people. That means the occupation has to end.
Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs responded with a covert operation to defeat BDS.
אתה צריך לעשות את זה עם הרבה מאוד עמימות. זה לא גוף צבאי היררכי שאם הרגנו את X, אז כל הגוף מתחתיו לא פועל.
The Israeli government leverages Jewish organizations in the diaspora.
Absolutely.
It's a psychological campaign involving spying and smears.
You discredit the messenger as a way of discrediting the message.
Just stay on message. And what is that message? BDS is a hate movement.
While our reporter monitored pro-Israel groups, he was asked to go undercover for the lobby.
You're going into enemy territory. It's not for everybody.
The production value on this is out of control.
During his summer in Washington,
It's like a
Tony
heist movie.
investigated how the lobby is responding to the growing support for BDS among students. AIPAC has an established network across high schools and universities and is also part of the wider campus coalition against BDS.
I work with the DC school, so I can connect you to Georgetown, GW, American. I think that you would really benefit from a conversation with the Israel on Campus Coalition. They also coordinate a lot between organizations. So like AIPAC, we focus on political. We have one very specific, very effective angle for combating BDS, but the ICC pools resources from all of the campus organizations so that like they're tapped in on all angles.
The Israel on Campus Coalition is a coordinating group at the front line of the battle against BDS.
We built up this massive national political campaign to crush them and to fight back and to fight fire with fire. What we saw was a growing global movement to destroy Israel that was manifesting on American college campuses. It makes sense that they would try to poison the next generation. The one thing every member of Congress and president and ambassador and newspaper editor has in common is, by and large, they spent a little bit of time on a college campus, and probably those were formative years.
The Israel on Campus Coalition is at the center of the lobby's response to BDS.
There are about 100, maybe 120 now, professionals that are working for a dozen national ICC partner organizations, like AIPAC and Hasbara Fellowships and Stand With Us and Hillel and Chabad and API.
Stand With Us and the ICC have a particularly close relationship.
One very quick observation, but it does make you seriously think about the campus culture wars, that if it is a site that really shapes people's lifetime political worldviews, it's just interesting that they point that out. Okay, I'm not going to interrupt. I'm not interrupting.
They really oversee like the whole movement. They're sort of the ones that like have the bird's eye view. Let's just say like next week, a BDS resolution comes to campus. So the ICC will be the ones, they'll organize a conference call with all the partners. So they might say, okay, stand with us, we need a little bit more of your help because we need something regarding like what's in the BDS resolution. The campus newspaper wants us to write like an op-ed. Can you guys help like the op-ed? So they'll sort of be the ones and they'll sort of be overseeing it.
One of Tony's fellow researchers at the Israel Project had also worked with Stand With Us. One evening, Amanda told him how the work she'd been asked to do often made her feel uneasy.
Stuff we produced, I felt was like it would be like pictures of Palestinian kids with a knife. Those videos of like kids gonna like stab people, and like we need to put this on Facebook, and they probably make memes like and do like graphics about like that. It was in everything. It was in like presentations of Palestinian terrorism that we did for college students and high school students, and it was like on our Facebook pages. It's embarrassed to be associated with it.
You told me about that guy who was like telling you to like use racist, like use.
Yeah.
Were they going to universities and using that kind of language? Or?
Yeah, universities, articles, Facebook, everything.
At the Israel Project's offices, Amanda confided further in Tony. Her boss at Stand With Us instructed her to call BDS a racist hate group as often as possible, she said, because it polls well. Stand With Us also had what she described as a covert group which would slander people as anti-Semites. It made her feel uncomfortable. Amanda recalled how Stand With Us was involved at her university. Students who criticized Israel's treatment of Palestinians were routinely accused of anti-Semitism.
The pro-Israel side would say things like, it's anti-Semitic. Say things like, why are they targeting Israel and not other Arab countries? You know, like, look at all this bad stuff happening to other places, and, you know, and Israel is like a democracy. Like, they would just say all this stuff that was, like, so irrelevant.
Do you think that there have been well-intentioned activists on American campuses who have found themselves in very difficult situations because these pro-Israel groups have tarnished them as anti-Semites?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, there it is.
Stand With Us holds an annual conference in Los Angeles. Its focus is on how to fight the BDS movement.
BDS tentacles? I'm all right.
Its focus
I give
is
up.
on how to fight the
Oh,
BDS
come on.
movement.
Are you kidding me? Are you? Come on.
A venomous,
Jesus.
coexistence movement that will
After the Greta Thunberg memes.
the annihilation of the Jewish state.
Jacob Bain from the Israel on Campus Coalition linked BDS to the rise in anti-Semitic hate crimes in America.
Anti-Semitism is increasing in general, right? In the same way that we're seeing anti-Semitism increase in the community, we're seeing these awful, terrifying desecrations of Jewish cemeteries. Campus is no exception.
At a social event held by a pro-Israel advocacy group, Tony finds out more about Stand With Us. Many here are recent graduates with backgrounds in student politics.
I was the chief of staff for my friend who was our student senator. We had Stand With Us write some checks, but we didn't let them put their logo on it. It's just our names on the logo. We didn't want that association because on Berkeley campus, if you don't know, they hate Stand With Us.
As well as working behind the scenes to provide funds, Stand With Us helps pro-Israel groups denounce students who support equal rights for Palestinians.
We've used Stand With Us strategically on my campus to have them publish stuff when we wanted stuff published. One girl that was running for our student senate, her last name's Dick, Samaya Dick.
The summer of 2014, the Gaza bombings happened. There's a lot of activity in the Bay Area, a lot of protests. You hear
2014?
Intifada. So, and I asked them, and I was like, oh, what does that mean?
When Samaya stood for the Student Senate at Berkeley, the Arabic word meaning uprising inspired her election slogan.
My last name means faith and governance, a way of life. There was other hashtags, so it was like Din for the Win, Din Dynasty, and didn't really like them. So when I launched my campaign, it just seemed fitting to launch it with, hashtag Dintifada.
She ran on the hashtag Dintifada as her Dintifada, her last name's Dick, Samaya Din. And we're like, this isn't okay.
Stand With Us and launched a social media assault on Samaya's campaign and her character.
We had a campaign party, it was a launch party, and an hour later, I'm getting all these messages.
So
We had
boomers.
Stand With Us attacked this girl in an article, at least on their Facebook, right? They shared the screenshots and stuff and talked about, like, this isn't okay.
The candidate's slogan makes light of a massive campaign of violence, the second intifada, in which racist terrorist organizations killed over 1,000 Israelis. I mean, episode 1, I said this already, but if you are running for political office, even student political office, shitposting is probably not the best strategy because you really do open yourself up to this stuff. I understand they're just kids or whatever, but it's a hard lesson sorely learned. I guess March 10th, 2015, people don't even have a concept for what this kind of like comedic posting means and the way that it can be just blown up at scale. So yeah, you feel bad for them, but damn.
The next day, Stand With Us completely took my campaign slogan out of context. It's just an Arabic word, meaning uprising. And they redefined it to then serve their own purpose. The redefinition to me was killing of all Jews.
Samaya received a barrage of abuse on social media. They called you a frustrated...
You can see in all the comments too that the Stand With Us organization is, they're just tagging all of these people to draw their attention to it. So I guess the standard amount of pushback that you would get for an edgy joke that was inappropriate from someone running for student government would be like, you know, let's say it'd be 10%, and then this organization blows it up like 10-fold, 100-fold. It's just like you start to lose the scale on this.
Sexually repressed woman.
What?
They said you were scum. They wanted to kick you out of the country. How hard was all that to deal with?
Yeah, I distanced myself from that. I would go out and I would be walking on campus. Everyone would be looking at me. I felt like I needed to hide. It took me 3 days. I didn't sleep. I was just like, what's going on?
We don't want Stand With Us's name, you know, on our name. They have all sorts of followers, and some of those people are a little crazy. You have people that saying, like, that person should die. This girl was getting death threats. People are like, she's a terrorist, blah, blah, blah.
How involved are they on campus politics then? Like even if it's
money, they get money, but it's rare that they put their name on something because the leadership that I helped create on that campus is aware that it ruins relationships.
At the Israel on Campus Coalition in Washington, Tony discovered that the lobby is deliberately adopting a clandestine approach on campuses.
We should stand behind our work, not in front of it. It's not helpful for Stand With Us to say to a pro-Israel student, or the Israel Project to say to a pro-Israel student, oh, sure, we'll help you, but you have to put our logo on it. We're working like so closely with Stand With Us, and we have such a tight partnership with them today that like it's totally seamless.
Tony also discovered that anonymity is a key strand of the campaign against BDS.
If one of these terrorists on campus wants to disrupt a pro-Israel lecture or something and like unfurl a banner or whatever else, we're going to investigate them, look into bad stuff they've done. That stuff becomes very useful in the moment, and there are any number of ways to push it out. The only thing is that we do it securely and anonymously, and that's the key.
It was a Sunday. I was in the kitchen. My partner was in the living room with my daughter. Came in with her laptop, and she said, "You've got to see this."
Bill Mullen has been a campaigner for the BDS movement for years. His wife had been sent a link to a website containing a letter addressed to her.
Oh.
This letter purported to be by a former student who said that she had been sexually harassed by me, and she had found other students at Purdue who had had the same experience, and she was writing this letter to tell their story.
With the anti-Israel people, what's most effective, what we found, at least in the last year, is you do the opposition research, put up some anonymous website, and then put up targeted Facebook ads.
Within a very short time, within about 48 hours, we were able to establish that these multiple sites that we had found attacking me had been taken out almost at the same time, and that they were clearly the work of the same people.
Every few hours, you drip out a new piece of the opposition research. It's psychological warfare. Drives them crazy.
One of the accounts said that in the process of supposedly putting my hand on her, I'd invited her to a Palestine organizational meeting. And I thought, well, you're sort of putting your cards on the table there, whoever you are. We found out that a student at Purdue, who I work with, had also been targeted.
A former activist with Students for Justice in Palestine agreed to speak only with her face concealed.
It said that I would get drunk and go and have sex with multiple guys, and that's just a huge attack on my character and a massive lie. My parents were very upset. They immediately told me to quit my involvement with SJP.
They either shut down or they spend time responding to it and investigating it, which is time they can't spend attacking Israel. That's incredibly effective.
Oh, this fucking dick.
The main focus was to attack my reputation and my character. Pretty much to mess with me so that I don't want to continue my involvement with SJP.
It was really an attempt by people who didn't know us to think, maybe I can destroy this marriage at the very least. Maybe I can cause them horrendous personal suffering. The same letter purporting to be harassment to my wife used the name of our daughter. I think that was the worst moment. I think we thought, these people will do anything. They're capable of doing anything.
Could you send me some of these websites? I'd be very curious just to see what they look like.
I couldn't.
You couldn't, okay.
But, you know, Canary Mission is a good example. Canary Mission is highly, highly effective to the extent that we monitor the Students for Justice in Palestine and their allies.
I remember it was the morning, I was getting ready for school, I was about to graduate at this point, in a pretty cheery mood, I'd say. I got a Facebook message from one of my friends. She goes, "Hey Marcel, I don't mean to freak you out, but I think you should see this." I click on it and then I see it's a picture of me and it's my name and it's a profile about me.
Master
When I
of
saw
incarceration?
that this was a website dedicated to taking down pro-BDS activists and painting us all as terrorists and anti-Semitic, it was chaos. It was chaos in my mind. What are people gonna think when they look at my name on Google? Are they gonna think I'm a terrorist? Are they gonna think I don't like Jewish people?
And they're picking out individuals who they think are critical of Israel,
Her
and they're
name is not
smearing
on the
them.
site for whatever it's
And
worth
they're
now.
telling them that
It's no longer there.
what's going to happen here is if you don't cease and desist from acting like this, we in the end will do much to destroy your career.
A few years later, these
That's what I'm
individuals are applying
searching
for
in the other
jobs
tab.
within your company.
Canary Mission's promotional video threatens to pass these smears onto prospective employers.
Ensure that today's radicals are not tomorrow's employees.
It was shattering to me because I had to look for a job, I had to start my life, and now I had this website smearing my name before I even got a chance to really make an
Sorry, I lied. I spelled it incorrectly. Her profile is still on here. I put Marcella with an A. It's with an E.
name for myself.
Somebody did contact my employer and ask for me to be fired based on my pro-Palestine activism. They said that you know, if they continued to employ me, that their values are anti-Semitic. It can be really scary at first. I was mostly harassed via Twitter. They were tweeting me like every 2 or 3 days. They take screenshots, even way back to my Facebook pictures that don't even look like me anymore, just digging and digging through my online presence.
They're terrified of Canary Mission, and it's about time.
We had always been afraid of ending up on there. It was like very personal. They see us as such a threat that they have to kind of twist and turn and delve into our personal lives, as if they were trying to scare us into stopping our work. Their Twitter campaign is relentless.
Every picture that I post on Facebook, it goes onto one of their websites with every tweet that I put in. Every hashtag I post on Instagram, it goes into one of their files.
The research operation is very high tech. When I got here a few years ago, the budget was like $3,000. Today it's like $1.5 million or more. Probably it's like $2 million even at this point. I don't even know, it's huge. It's a massive budget. We've got major political consulting firms on retainer that are here all the time. We have our own opposition researchers. We have a lot of communications capabilities, and what's most interesting about it, I think, is that 90% of the people who pay attention to this space very closely have no idea what we're actually doing, which I like.
Jesus. The most
As he
incriminating
left his
quotes.
meeting at the
Oh my
ICC,
God.
Tony reflected on the way Jacob Boehm had reacted to his questions about Canary Mission.
We do it securely and anonymously, and that's the key.
It sounds very similar to like a Canary Mission and that kind of thing. Is that,
Yeah.
Are you guys like in touch with them at all, or is there any kind of, no?
No, Canary Mission is totally anonymous.
Yes. Yeah, I was
it's
wondering.
hard to figure out who's behind it. Canary Mission is highly, highly effective, to the extent that we monitor the Students for Justice in Palestine and their allies. We're doing it back. I mean, not we, but there's some anonymous group.
We don't know who's behind it. I would ask where they get their money from, because ultimately that tells you where the control is.
In part 2, we reveal for the first time who set up and finances Canary Mission.
He called a group of us to ask us what we thought. I told him actually I thought it was a bad idea, but he did it anyway.
And how the pro-Israel lobby uses smears to try to change American law.
Investigate us for what? For doing nothing wrong?
Canary Mission, it looks like you can just send in an incident. It doesn't seem very hard to get in touch with them.
In part 1, how anonymous websites smear supporters of the BDS movement.
Use the name of our daughter. They're capable of doing anything.
It's psychological warfare. Drives them crazy.
Not saying ownership, but I think it's not serious.
Our undercover reporter, Tony, is having a coffee with Eric, his boss at the Israel Project. Tony wanted to find out more about Canary Mission.
There's a guy named Adam Milstein who you might want to meet. He's a convicted felon. That's a bad way to describe him. He's a real estate mogul.
This is the guy. This is the guy who runs it.
When I was working with him when I was at APAC, I was literally emailing back and forth with him while he was in jail. But he's loaded. I mean, he's close to $500,000.
Adam Milstein has become a central figure in the lobby. His foundation funds numerous pro-Israel organizations. He also sits on the boards of AIPAC's National Council, the Israel on Campus Coalition, and Stand With Us.
Damn.
Our reporter filmed him alongside Jacob Boehm from the Israel on Campus Coalition at the Stand With Us conference in Los Angeles. The two men had lengthy private discussions. Milstein is close to probably the wealthiest donor to the pro-Israel lobby, Sheldon Adelson.
Oh, shit, there he
Adelson's money
is.
helped Milstein expand the Israeli-American Council into a major new force within the lobby.
God, he's so grotesque. Oh my God. It's like that
Adelson
character
arrived
from
at the
Dune.
2016 IAC conference with Rudy Giuliani, now an advisor to President Trump. An IAC video from the conference shows Milstein and Adelson discussing their partnership.
You said you see the vision and you tell us, go and do it. And we took your orders and we made it happen. And we took your money.
There's somebody else around that can give you $50 million?
No, there's no... Sheldon.
Eric is wary of Adelson's relationship with a U.S. president.
He's really impulsive. If he gets a call from, Donald Trump, comes to get all the pro organizations to start helping us. He starts twisting their arms and putting pressure on them. Like, I give you $1 million. You better start putting out TV ads. Like, what the that's not our goal. It's not our mission.
Tony attended the Israeli-American Council's annual conference. At a party, he spotted the IAC's chairman, Adam Milstein.
It's very important that we're proud Jews. We're not, I was born Jews, but I'm really not Jew, and I'm not sure I'm proud Jew. We're proud about our history. We have strong connection to the land of Israel. So this Israeli identity is now all over the world.
I'm Tony. I'm in the Israel Project with Eric Gallagher.
Milstein told Tony how critics of Israel should be handled.
First of all, investigate who they are. What's their agenda? They're picking on the Jews because it's easy, because it's popular. We need to expose what they really are. And we need to expose the fact that they're anti-everything we believe in. And we need to put them on the run. Right now, they can do whatever they like, terrorize us, and we are...
How do we put them on the run, though?
Doing it by exposing who they are, what they are, the fact that they're racist, the fact that they're bigoted, that they're anti-democracy.
Do you think there's a good role to just naming them as anti-Semites?
Not just anti-Semites, it's too simple. We need to present them for what they really are. They're anti-freedom, they're anti-Christian, they're anti-democracy. That's what we need to do.
Numerous groups from the pro-Israel lobby were attending the conference. An Israeli official gave them a message to pass on to BDS supporters in America.
Everybody out there who has to do anything with BDS should ask himself twice, do I want to be on this side or do I want to be on the other side? If I'm submitting to BDS, what would be the effect? We've got the budget. We can bring things to the table that are quite different.
In episode 1 of The Lobby USA, Tony discovered that the Israeli government has launched a covert campaign to gather information on American citizens.
We have 3 different sub-campaigns: data gathering, working on activist organization, money trail.
The Israeli official named one organization that was a partner in its covert campaign, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, or FDD.
Defense of democracy.
This is something that only a country with its resources can do the best. We have FDD. We have others working on this.
She names the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy as an agent for this foreign government going after American citizens. I mean, that quote is a smoking gun.
Yeah. Sorry, are you Jonathan? Hey, I'm Tony.
Hi.
I met up with Benny Weinstein.
Jonathan Shanzer works for the FDD. He produces research on the financing of armed groups.
Yeah, I'm very interested in getting involved in like BDS activity and stuff like that.
Hopefully anti-BDS.
If you had on tape a senior Russian or Iranian or even Canadian official saying that they were running covert operations to spy on Americans and using an organization like the Foundation for Defense of Democracies as a front group, I think it would be a bombshell.
Shanzer was invited to talk at the training workshops that Tony attended.
Think tanks are the folks that used to work in government, have PhDs, and decided not to become professors. In the Middle Eastern Studies field, academics have failed, and that's why people like me are considered useful, at least to some.
To call it the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies is a misnomer. It's the Foundation for the Defense of Israel. When you strip away all the layers of the onion and you look at what you really have, what you have is a foundation that is dedicated to one goal, and that is defending Israel at every turn.
The FDD's mission has been to associate students who support BDS through links to charities and pressure groups, ultimately to Hamas, which governs the besieged territory of Gaza.
We found out that there was a coordinator who was being paid to make sure that the activists from a certain group called SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine, who was working with all the different SJP chapters around the country to make sure that they all have the same message. So we said, wait a minute, who are these people? That kind of sounds like a little bit like a network. We took a little bit of a deeper dive. We found out that there was one organization that was in fact the mothership.
Shanza's mothership is a group called American Muslims for Palestine.
Here's the remarkable thing, is that this organization has employees that used to work for Hamas charities here in the United States. Many employees, as a matter of fact. They used to work for the Holy Land Foundation. Does that name ring a bell to anyone?
The Holy Land Foundation was the largest Islamic charity in the United States. In the aftermath of 9/11, the government accused it of funding terrorism.
With this action, we go beyond the Al-Qaeda network to target groups whose violent actions are designed to destroy the Middle East peace process.
Hamas emerged as a resistance movement, challenging Israel's occupation of Palestinian land. The United States lists it as a foreign terrorist organization. 5 members of the Holy Land Foundation were later convicted of sending money to Hamas.
Almost 90% of all those Arab and Muslims that were targeted in the United States post 9/11 were targeted because of their engagement with the Palestine issue. They had nothing to do with being members of Al-Qaeda, have no relationship whatsoever to what's so-called transnational terrorism.
There's been a very strong trend from Israel and its advocates since the September 11, 2001 attacks to portray Israel as part of a civilizational war where Israel is on the Western side and Israel's critics are on the side of the terrorists.
According to reports in Israeli newspapers in 2008, Prime Minister Netanyahu said 9/11 had been good for Israel. The attacks had swung American public opinion in its favor.
It's not surprising one of the largest cases that we had in this country was the shutting down of the Holy Land Foundation. If you look at all those that were targeted in relations to the Palestine-Israel conflict and their engagement politically.
Turns out there are 3 individuals currently working for what we'll call a mothership that used to work for the Holy Land Foundation.
3 former volunteers at the Holy Land Foundation are now involved with American Muslims for Palestine. None of these individuals has been accused of any wrongdoing in the United States.
So I'm thinking, okay, terror financiers. I used to do this for a living. I used to work for the Treasury Department tracking terrorist money. I know these guys. What's going on here?
We have no affiliation with any foreign organization. We don't receive money from overseas. And this mothership organization is a very small organization.
But the pro-Israel advocacy class heard another message.
It was that the primary driver of the BDS movement in America is all populated by people who are former Hamas charity employees. This is not a grassroots organization. This is not a grassroots movement. It is being coordinated by very bad people, and it needs to be made known.
Think tanks like the FDD play an important role for Israel in the media. Their selective use of evidence is often presented as legitimate academic research.
They try to educate people to understand that Israel is effectively a Western liberal democracy in the sea of terrorist states, which is the Arab world. The other goal is to intimidate and to smear people.
Shanzer is invited by pro-Israel congressmen to provide evidence before subcommittees on terrorism in the Middle East. He uses them to insinuate that prominent activists for Palestinian equal rights are linked to armed groups.
The AMP's founder and president, Hatem Bazian, was one of 2 featured speakers at a 2004 fundraising dinner in California. Incidentally, the other speaker at this dinner was Mohammed Al-Mazain, who is currently in jail for his role in the Holy Land Foundation and for providing financial support to Hamas.
When you enter it into the congressional record, now people are begin to think that there's some legitimacy to it. So this dumping of utter nonsense and garbage into the congressional record, into a legitimate hearing, will have an effect down the line.
There's also Osama Abu Ershad. He is currently the National Coordinator and Policy Director for AMP. Mr. Abu Ershad also runs a pro-Hamas newspaper in Virginia.
They made Palestine as a front on the war on terrorism. It was Al-Qaeda that attacked the United States. It wasn't Hamas or any Palestinian organization. It was Al-Qaeda.
I should note here that our open source research did not indicate that AMP or any of these individuals are currently involved in illegal activity.
He himself, in his testimony in Congress, he says, we have no evidence of any wrongdoing by this organization, but still you have to investigate them. So investigate us for what? For doing nothing wrong?
The fact it's rubbish does not mean that people don't listen to it, right?
Shanzer's allegations that American students are somehow connected to armed groups in the Middle East has become part of the lobby's attempt to demonize BDS.
Organizations that have spread throughout the world via a network of carefully constructed proxies.
We should promote the fact that, according to Jonathan Shanzer, knows terrorism, he said a group of people who were active in funding Hamas have now formed a group, American Muslims for Palestine. Shanzer, testifying, said they were a leading driver of the BDS campaign. They're the most important sponsor and organizers of SJP. We have to make it clear in every way possible that they are being funded and trained by vicious lovers of Hamas.
Hello there.
Hi. Hi, everyone. How's it going?
Tony spoke again to his contacts at the Allgemeine newspaper. They want him to go undercover at a rally supporting BDS. They want Tony to find a connection between the activists he's supposed to spy on and the Holy Land Foundation.
There's a long history of crimes affiliated with the BDS movement that have been judged as such by U.S. courts. For example, the Holy Land Foundation. Are these people still active and present within the movement? Who seems to be the people running the show here? Is there any acknowledgement of any sponsors?
This is an incestual business. You know, they're all interconnected. This is not me just spouting off because I'm paranoid. There have been actual cases, like the Holy Land case that happened a few years ago. A lot of these guys had worked with those people, and they themselves have not yet been indicted, but they're all interconnected. Part of the reason why that is so crucial is because when you're making lines from one organization to the other, eventually you make a line to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Iran.
Sounds good.
There it is.
Well, we're grateful to have you. Let's see how it goes.
While he considered his undercover mission for the Allgemeine, Tony set up a meeting with Jonathan Shanzer. It was at the office of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
You too.
At their earlier meeting, Shanzer had stressed the importance of links that connected students who support BDS to the Holy Land Foundation and then Hamas. Now he was more downbeat. The lobby is apparently failing in its attempts to discredit the movement.
BDS has taken everybody surprised. It's come up, behind everyone's back and bit them on the ass. Yeah, that's a complete mess. I can tell you that I don't think anybody's doing a good job. We're not even doing a good job. We did some good research, but we haven't figured out how to
do anything with it.
Shanza is unhappy that his alleged links between Students for Justice in Palestine and Hamas have not been publicized more widely.
The stuff that I shared with your group, our hope was to really, make this something that people could sink their teeth into, but no one has turned it into, no one's weaponized it, is probably the best way of describing it.
The slurs the lobby once relied on are no longer working.
Oh.
Personally, I think anti-Semitism as a smear is not what it used to be.
Shanza's now trying to link BDS to a small Palestinian faction that once was involved in militancy, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine.
So you got Hamas on one hand, you got PFLP on the other. Sooner or later, this stuff will come to light.
What have you found so far?
We'll come out with something when I've got enough. We found indications that there could be some research to produce.
Their strategy is to fill the pipeline of as much research and information that creates what I consider to be is the civil society assassination of Arab Muslim Palestinians in such a way that they will not have an entry into the debate.
Shanza claims he's found yet another means of discrediting the BDS movement, this time connecting it to the Muslim Brotherhood.
The problem is the Muslim Brotherhood's not an illegal organization in the United States. So you can say that that's bad, but if there's no legal link, there's no, there's no law enforcement angle on any level, then it becomes really hard to win.
The Muslim Brotherhood is a loose international movement which endorses the political expression of Islamic values. Congress is now considering designating it as a terrorist organization.
They are moving right now with a bill to try to ban the Muslim Brotherhood movement. So the strategy that is being deployed, which is create the demonization, filling the garbage can with as much material as possible, especially from a Congress and Senate.
We've been dealing with the radical Islam from the Islamic Republic since 1979, the Muslim Brotherhood since the 1920s. You've got the Islamic State, you've got the Islamic Republic. Their hatred for Israel, their Islamist ideology is what really motivates the terrorism that they carry out.
You have to attack their weaknesses better than they attack your weaknesses. That's war.
Why they're doing this? Why they're going after our organizations? It's always connected to the issue of Palestine. They always try to connect us, to connect dots that they don't exist.
Terrorism is a very effective word. And what a lot of people in the lobby try to do is describe pro-Arab or pro-Palestinian groups as terrorist groups. There's no doubt that when you employ the tactic of identifying Muslim or Arab or Palestinian groups as terrorist organizations, that you're promoting Islamophobia.
Shanza is a popular speaker at the pro-Israel campus events that Tony attends.
Hey, how are you?
Good to see you.
You too. Welcome.
A panel discussion at George Mason University is an opportunity to promote the FDD's research to a friendly audience.
My organization, FDD, earlier this year concluded a deep dive study into the fiscal and corporate sponsors of BDS, and we found several troubling connections to the Palestinian terrorist group Hamas, an Islamist supremacist organization that seeks nothing less than the annihilation of the State of Israel. I recently published research just this week showing that BDS groups get help from other Palestinian terrorist organizations like the Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine. The problem is that most students don't know who is behind BDS, and most Americans don't know, and this is why BDS is gaining traction.
AMP is the de facto national leadership of Students for Justice in Palestine. There is an actual direct connection between the people who were involved in raising money for Hamas and people who are involved in BDS activism on American campuses today.
Pollock claims that SJP is just a front to hide the real agenda of American Muslims for Palestine.
You'll notice their name is Students for Justice in Palestine. You don't hear the word Islamic, you don't hear the word Muslim in that name, and you hear the word justice, which is kind of a buzzword on campuses today. Everyone's for justice, right? You're not for injustice. The crowd that's kind of behind the scenes is actually a very Islamic radical cause. And if you actually get like into the weeds on SJP, they've aligned with groups that are for not just the destruction of Israel, the destruction of America.
That's a narrative that suits Israel because it takes the pressure off Israel to actually end what it's doing to Palestinians. But it's an incredibly dangerous narrative for the whole world, and I think we're all paying the price of it.
Pollock even accuses Jewish supporters of BDS of being in league with Hamas.
Which is Jewish Voice for Peace, or as I call it, Jewish Voice for Hamas. It'd be like having a group called, like, African Americans for Slavery. It's like, it's crazy, right? A lot of the JVP people are not Jewish. They've had a real problem of like people basically pretending to be Jews because the anti-Israel activism it's a little more sexy.
You're here speaking with a rabbi. I work for Jewish Voice for Peace. I mean, we're a Jewish organization. I mean, again, I think that's another kind of absurd claim.
When you talk about SJP and when you talk about BDS, you talk about them as a hate group, as a movement that absolutely endorses violence against civilians, not military conflict, but violence against civilians, aka terrorism. You discredit the messenger as a way of discrediting the message.
Tony's boss, Eric, was also at the event. He's old friends with Noah Pollock.
I want to hire Tony at the Israel press. Tony's another troublemaker from the UK. Yeah. He's a good guy. Noah's the best.
As Tony left the event with Eric, the conversation turned to smearing BDS supporters. Eric said wealthy pro-Israel donors now have the freedom to fight Israel's critics however they want.
In this country, you have these billionaire types who are starting to realize, like, oh wow, I don't need to participate in the Republican or Democratic parties. I could build my own apparatus and have influence from Los Angeles or Detroit. And Al Milstein is one of those guys. And he funds the Israel Project. He does a lot of great work.
Eric then made a remarkable claim when Tony asked about Canary Mission.
Who are the people involved with them?
It's him.
Adam Milstein.
Yeah, I don't know who he hired to oversee it. Adam Milstein. He's the guy who funds it.
Wow. He just gave him up.
Everything we believe in. We need to put them on the right.
So Adam Milstein, he funds the Israel Project and he's funding the Canary Mission website.
Yeah, which is interesting because it makes it seem as though we're a part of it, but we're not. Actually, I was involved with the effort to start the name and shame. He called a group of us to ask us what we thought. I told him actually I thought it was a bad idea, but he did it anyway.
They've lost the political argument. They can now do nothing but resort to personal smears against us. They can't engage us in discussions of the occupation. They can't defend apartheid. They can't defend the bombings in Gaza, but they can try to destroy our lives.
Kind of really desperate and pathetic almost, going after students, trying to compromise their futures because they're trying to fight for social justice.
I know a guy actually who's working with Adam on all
I'll
sorts of
give commentary after we're almost through the episode.
Have a very sophisticated digital strategy for exposing these people and making sure the stuff stays with them. Yeah, that's awesome. There's no one on their side doing it, so you don't have to worry about your reputation.
Okay, they had these after each of the episodes. They approach everybody, nobody comes forward with a comment or anything.
In episode 4, how the pro-Israel lobby is fighting the public relations war.
The activism has to be like very provocative.
Okay, well, we're about to see 4, so I'm just going to talk over this very, very briefly here. The comment about the professor's comment about not being able to participate in the political debate anymore, and so all you can resort to is personal smears. That sounds very accurate. I'm also fixated on this word justice, and I kind of feel like we're at a pivotal point based on the way that the rhetoric in American journalism and American institutions has been stacked in the last few years of this intense focus on social justice and settler colonialism, like those words specifically. And now that the violence is going down in the literal settlements, none of those media outlets, none of those institutions can say shit about it. In fact, they're firing their staff that speaks out about it. So there's a really big rift that's opening up. Some of these things are just, they are not making sense on a rhetorical level. Something is wrong with the story. The idea of what is a near approximation of a theocratic ethnostate being a Western liberal democracy, these alliances just don't make sense on a rhetorical level anymore. The values are not aligned. So I really feel like, you know, I'm not going to go on too long here because our point is to watch episode 4. I just want to give a brief bit of commentary. I may write about this a few weeks from now in a longer version for Substack, but something to do with the institutional crisis in the United States inviting in all of these radical voices, radical anarchist, abolitionist voices, to prevent the kind of common sense reforms, common sense socialist reforms that are necessary to happen to the institutions before they absolutely lose legitimacy. That has just really opened up this enormous crisis. I mean, they were so resistant to reform that they invited in anyone else to give the counter narrative. And now push has come to shove. And it turns out none of it meant anything. None of it meant anything the whole time. You know, this would be the moment for all of those panel discussions, all those press releases, all of those high-paid speaking gigs, all of the DEI stuff to really come to fruition, and absolutely nothing is happening. So there's going to be, I think, it was already happening. There's been a woke backlash. There's, you know, all sorts of things that you can call it, but like some of the appointments to the institutions and media outlets, those people are now being pushed out or replaced or forced to resign or something else like that. And it's not just Artforum I'm talking about. It's the New York Times. It's a whole bunch of different organizations. But there's going to be something else that happens that like this is the moment. This is the conflict where the way in which the discourse was partitioned, it can no longer remain in that arrangement. The words, the language surrounding these things, all of it has not just been devalued, it has evaporated. It has been liquidated. It is actively being pushed out. So yeah, I mean, it's such a horrible, catastrophic, terrible few weeks to be talking about these things, as if American institutions are the most like important thing when there's 80 to 90% civilian casualties. It doesn't necessarily feel like our magazines are the most important thing here, but there's something happening. This is the decisive moment of the shift, and it is an absolute tragedy that it is unfolding this way. Yeah, just deeply demoralizing, hypocritical throughout the last few years. Okay. Yeah, sorry, that just mentioning that word justice is something that people fixate on, and it's just really got me on this train of thought. We're about to start part 4. This is the final episode of The Lobby. If you are joining us very late, we have watched 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the final conclusion episode of this documentary. Something about that last one was just very stressful. I don't know if it was the music or those interviews, or like I kept feeling like he was going to get... I don't think this is a spoiler because they mentioned it in the article before it was released, but eventually Tony, the journalist who is undercover for Al Jazeera, he is made at some point during the documentary, so that might be revealed in episode 4. I'm not sure. Anyway, let's dive into it. We'll see what happens. Yeah, I'll try to pause and give more concise commentary rather than speaking over it.
Previously on The Lobby USA, Noah Pollock from the Emergency Committee for Israel tells supporters how to describe the BDS movement.
When you talk about BDS, you talk about them as the movement that absolutely endorses violence against civilians, aka terrorism.
why they're doing this. They always try to connect us, to connect dots that they don't exist.
In the final episode of The Lobby USA, a look ahead. After half a century of Israeli occupation, hopes that a peace deal could create two states in the lands of historic Palestine are fading fast. So how will the lobby respond? Our man on the inside finds out. Using an undercover reporter, Al Jazeera's investigative unit infiltrates one of the most powerful lobbies in the world.
Getting $38 billion in security aid to Israel matters, which is what AIPAC is doing.
We examine how the lobby, led by AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, has secured unwavering support in Congress.
Congressmen don't do anything unless you pressure them. And the only way to do that is with money.
What the lobby is all about is to make sure that Israel gets special treatment from the United States forever.
But after occupying Palestinian lands for half a century, the pro-Israel lobby is facing a new challenge.
We called for a full boycott of Israel, divesting from it, and eventually imposing sanctions on it to achieve UN-stipulated rights of the Palestinian people.
A movement to boycott, divest, and impose sanctions on Israel, BDS, was formed on American campuses.
It seems to be achieving its goals. It threatens future American support for Israel.
We believe in justice for all people. So that means the occupation has to end.
Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs responded with a covert operation to defeat BDS.
אתה צריך לעשות את זה עם הרבה מאוד עמימות. זה לא גוף צבאי היררכי שאם הרגנו את X, אז כל הגוף מתחתיו לא פועל.
The Israeli government leverages Jewish organizations in the diaspora.
Absolutely.
It's a psychological campaign involving spying and smears.
You discredit the messenger as a way of discrediting the message.
Just stay on message. And what is that message? BDS is a hate movement.
While our reporter monitored pro-Israel groups, he was asked to go undercover for the lobby.
You're going into enemy territory, not for everybody.
I was sorry, the very last thing I was going to say is just the sheer level of paranoia in all of these organizations of A knows B who works at this organization, who used to work at that organization, that everyone is enmeshed into these different webs, like on from every angle. Everyone is trying to find like these shadowy organizations that are back channeling influence. It seems like everyone is like extremely paranoid.
Our undercover reporter was attending a dinner at the annual conference of the Israeli-American Council in Washington. He met an American involved in the Israeli government's anti-BDS campaign.
In my job, I get to work with every major news network, and I don't even do media. I do academic work. Every university president takes our calls, takes our meetings, works with us. There's a legitimate government organization.
The discussion was dominated by the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement.
So many organizations focus on BDS, but for the most part, when it comes to BDS, we're very behind the scenes. I'm meeting with university presidents, faculty, students, but what they're doing is building relationships with local politicians, making sure that politicians know to turn to them when Israel-sensitive things come to the table.
The three-day conference brings together the constellation of pro-Israel lobby groups in the US. On the surface, things seem to be looking good for Israel.
Israel's booming. It's the startup nation. More venture capital is going into Israel today than at any other time in history. So why don't we just calm down, realize that BDS is worthless, it's losing, and ignore it.
The other guy just said it's going crazy, it's doing super well, it's spreading.
I don't think BDS was ever supposed to be about getting colleges to take their money out of Israel. So if we focus on the dollars, we could feel really good about ourselves. If we focus on the fact that an effort's being made to distance us those who love Israel from the rising generation, I think we need to worry.
Yeah, it's the influence. It's not the money, it's the influence. We went over that in episode 1.
When you get to the millennials and the students, it's a bad situation. And it's getting to the point now where the majority is more favorable towards the Palestinians than the Israelis.
While numerous speakers discussed ways to combat BDS, the lack of civil rights for Palestinians living under Israeli control was not raised.
Nobody talks about the reason why BDS exists at all. What's the model for the BDS movement? The model is South Africa. So, was that a bad thing to do?
An apartheid regime which denied equal rights to black South Africans was weakened and ultimately collapsed after a global economic and political boycott.
They're worried that the BDS movement will get to the stature that the South Africa boycott got to. So they're trying to stop it now. Imagine if the apartheid regime of de Klerk were able to have a lobby in America that it was a crime to support that boycott. Imagine that.
For nearly 2 decades, Israel's occupation was portrayed as temporary, while both sides pursued what's called a two-state solution.
The two-state solution. This is where the Palestinians get a state of their own in the occupied territories, i.e. the West Bank and Gaza.
But there's a problem. Jewish-only settlements have continued to grow within the boundary of a proposed Palestinian state. Successive US governments have openly doubted whether a viable Palestinian nation is either possible or necessary.
The settler agenda is defining the future of Israel, and their stated purpose is clear. They believe in one state, Greater Israel. In fact, one prominent minister declared just after the US election, and I quote, "The era of the two-state solution is over."
I'm looking at two-state and one state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one.
If the choice is one
What an
state,
answer.
Israel can either be Jewish or democratic. It cannot be both.
Yeah, wow. Hell yeah. You said
More
it.
and more people are beginning to buy into the argument that Israel is turning itself into an apartheid state. It used to be the case that the word apartheid was never used with Israel.
In order to discredit the apartheid label, the lobby has launched a campaign to try to co-opt black South Africans.
Oh my
Black
God,
South
yeah.
Africans who were apartheid activists, who were brought to Israel, saw the reality, came home angry at BDS. They felt lied to. They felt that someone had tried to steal their narrative. This is an effective tool. Bringing these black South African, former BDS activists, now Israel supporters to American campuses.
During his volunteership, Tony learned that the Israel Project has been developing a strategy called Stop Stealing My Apartheid. The plan is to feed articles written by black South Africans into the American media, claiming that BDS has distorted their history.
If you're disgusted by segregation in this country, if you're disgusted by South African apartheid, then you should also be disgusted by Israeli apartheid.
Another workshop was addressed by Israeli diplomats from consulates in the US. Black Lives Matter had attracted particular criticism after voicing support for the BDS movement. It appears that Israel's diplomats may be trying to challenge the apartheid label by canvassing support amongst African Americans.
The major problem of Israel is with the young generation of the black community. Black Lives Matter starts there. I had last week a dinner, sit-down dinner at my house for 40 people, which are considered the leadership of the black community, and very important people. They can be part of our doing an activity.
Pro-Israel groups are trying to cultivate a new generation of black leaders that is pro-Israel by bringing them to AIPAC conferences on all expenses paid trips, by taking them on delegations to Israel.
They're doing that because they're afraid of BDS and they're afraid of Black Lives Matter, which is this new struggle for black freedom that also sees black freedom as situated in a larger context. In 2014, Israel launched a siege of Gaza. In the same summer, police in Ferguson killed Mike Brown, and Ferguson rose up. And on the news at night, there would be both the latest out of Gaza and the latest out of Ferguson. There was solidarity that was expressed online with the Ferguson uprising. There were Palestinians who took to Twitter to cheer on the rebels of Ferguson and explain how to deal with tear gas.
Israel's diplomats have responded by evoking the legacy of Martin Luther King, claiming that the campaign for Palestinian civil rights bears no resemblance to the civil rights movement in America.
Dr. Clarence B. Jones, who wrote the draft speech for Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. He was his lawyer, he was his close friend. He's somebody that I reached out to. He became a very close and personal friend. Because of that relationship, he published 3 articles in the Huffington Post explaining why their agenda was hijacked. Martin Luther King will turn in his grave if he saw the anti-Israel tendencies or policies that are starting to emerge within Black Lives Matter.
There's something on one hand laughable about it, but there's something also really insidious about this. You're using the credibility of a freedom struggle to try to oppose another freedom struggle. And I think that that's appalling.
Soon after Black Lives Matter declared support for BDS, a fundraiser at a New York nightclub was suddenly cancelled. The venue's management said it didn't approve of the movement's stance on Israel.
Wow. That really is
Tony
a line.
was told by his boss, Eric, that the Israel Project was behind the decision.
I don't know if you saw, but this club, ditched a Black Lives Matter event. One of our donors, we just put in a call to him, and then he put in a call to the police.
Wow, to shut down this Black Lives Matter event. I think it's really appalling that a system in Israel has devised incredible and comprehensive ways to have a violent regime against Palestinians, that they would also invest resources into making sure to shore up support for that oppression here.
One evening at the IAC conference, Tony met a prominent activist. He's associated with the hardline trend in the pro-Israel lobby. Noah Pollock argues that tough tactics are needed to counter the apartheid label.
The activism has to be very provocative and attention-getting and just total no given. We're going to be more pro-Israel than you can even imagine. Just to provoke everyone.
Pollock believes the American public, unlike those in Britain, will accept his gloves-off strategy.
The majority of Americans are pro-Israel. Whereas if you take the poll of Israel and the UK, it's just pure hatred of Israel. Your country, basically let half of Pakistan move in, So you have a different problem than we do here.
Tony was told of a demonstration that Noah Pollock was organizing. A bus took protesters to an event organized by the pro-BDS movement.
Insane levels of
Students for Justice
nationalism.
in Palestine.
Hey man, I'm Tony. Marshall. Nice to meet you.
How do they get away with saying this?
It's going to be amazing and we're going to defeat BDS, or we're just broken.
Well, you can't beat them, join them.
We're obsessed with winning, so I just want to win. So I want to win something.
I don't win anymore.
The protesters are on a fellowship program run by a conservative think tank.
Hold on. Sorry. I have to see who that was in the...
This is one of those things where...
A bus took protesters to an event organized by the pro-BDS movement, Students for Justice in Palestine.
The bus is taking people to a SJP, Students for Justice in Palestine protest.
Hey man, I'm Tony. Marshall. Nice to meet you.
Marshall, yeah, fuck, dude, that's the fucking the co-host from the Realignment podcast. That's the what is it? Marshall and Sagar and Jetty. What's his last name? Realignment. Marshall Kosloff. He's like a fucking conservative Republican, right? Like, actually, I don't think I'm logged into Twitter on the... Oh, okay, you can see it. Yeah, dude, this is him. Marshall Kosloff. He's the co-host of the Realignment podcast that has Sagar and Jetty, who's one of the two co-hosts with Crystal Ball from Breaking Points is the name of their show. Is he... I was like, oh, fuck, dude. Is he like... Because I like their podcast, and I was like, fuck, is he like an Israel shill? Is he like... we watched him on the stream interview Peter Turchin. Like, this is a guy who has worthwhile opinions. It's worth listening to him. And I was like, fuck, is he like... Is he on the other side of this issue? No, okay, so he's going to a BDS protest. What? But he's like he's a conservative, isn't he? Okay, whatever. They're about realignment, all the different alignments or alliances or whatever. They're all being turned upside down. Interesting. That is not who I expected to see in episode 4. What's he doing on the bus? Let's find out.
This is one of those things where either it's going to be amazing and we're going to defeat BDS, or we're just broken.
Wait, they're going
to join them.
Defeat BDS.
I'm obsessed with winning, so I just want to win. So I want to win something. They don't win anymore.
Oh shit! Wait, no, I did interpret it right. The bus is bringing them to the protest, but they are the counter protesters. Dude, Marshall, what the fuck? I mean, he looks really young. I mean, he looks young here too, but like here he looks like a college student. Ooh.
They're on a fellowship program run by a conservative think tank called the Hoover Institution.
The Hoover Institute? Are you fucking kidding me?
This is actually the first foot soldier activity.
Oh, you neoliberal piece of shit.
Tony, what's your connection?
Give me a break.
The conspiracy that we're all part of?
Yeah, Diesel Project.
So you can't not come.
Their plan is to disrupt the National Conference of Students for Justice in Palestine. Marshall said that the pro-Israel protest had been poorly planned.
Carmelo's got a link in the chat. Sorry, what
just like Noah Pollock coming in the
what am I looking at here?
There are these jihadis who basically support suicide bombing, and they're at a campus, and you have to stop them.
A chance to shout at Arabs?
As we're leaving, we mentioned to our boss yesterday that we're going. She's like, oh yeah, that's mandatory. You need to go.
While they've been told they have to take part in the protest, not everyone on the bus is convinced it's good for their reputation.
Do you know what my worst nightmare is? I'm actually not kidding. It's a photo of Dion and I together, and we're just like clearly identifiable. And they're like, "Oh, we're these like traitors."
Yeah, you're fucking identifiable, bro.
I'm like, we did. We cost $50,000 plus benefits.
Wait, what? Oh my God!
Like, that's mandatory. You need to go.
While they've been told they have to take part in the protest,
are they paid protesters?
Not everyone on the bus is convinced it's good for their reputation.
Do you know what my worst nightmare is? I'm actually not kidding. It's a photo of Dion and I together, and we're just like clearly identifiable. And they're like, "Oh, we're these like traitors who sold out to the Jewish conspiracy for money." I'm like, "We did. We cost $50,000 plus benefits."
As the bus leaves, they discuss whether there's any point in staging the protest.
I'm just skeptical
of using the protesting tactic against them?
That's not our demographic. They don't like. The reason protests work is when like the people involved really care about it and like want to be there.
But that's what we're supposed to do because they keep existing and they keep expanding, and no matter how.
They were not exactly forced to go because of their jobs, right? They said like, oh, that's mandatory, but like they said that's mandatory after they already said they're going. Like, were they forced to go to keep their jobs? What is being implied here? I don't know. He's trying to like wriggle out of it. I don't know. Sam Quick in the chat, good to see you. I'm looking forward to our season of Discovery play. We're watching part 4 of The Lobby. This is a heavy one, and we actually just found out that host of a podcast I like is a paid protester for Israel, I guess. Like, literally is a paid protester for Israel. Okay.
Lawmakers come out against BDS, they keep growing. Well, no, you're right. Like, we should do something, but at the end of the day, like, the notion that the right is ever going to dominate any sort of campus protest is ridiculous.
You can't just let them.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying.
And that's what happened.
If I were a high-level Jewish immigrant, I would be like a little more realistic about expectations.
So what would you do if you were a high-level Jewish?
I continue to do what you're doing, which is focusing on the actual power structures that use power structures in themselves. Like, the reality is there's not a single college president in this country that would actually sign BDS. There is not a single...
They all allow it.
It's making sense, actually.
Because of free speech, they cannot let them.
So what are they supposed to do about it?
When a protest is sponsored and organized by outsiders, but made to appear like a popular grassroots movement, it's known as astroturfing.
They did a really job of getting me excited to show up and protest.
It kind of, the way you're putting it kind of sounds a bit like astroturfing.
No, this is astroturf. No, this is actually the definition. There's a bus.
What does that mean?
They're bussing in the protesters. Oh, they're literally bussing in the protesters.
You're taking corporate money and you're manufacturing the image of a grassroots movement with corporate money by basically paying people to appear as activists. It just shows how little actual grassroots power they have and how all of their power is at the top.
It's not that astroturfing is wrong. It's just that, like, your astroturf has to be, like, committed.
Dude, you just need to shut the fuck up. Dig yourself in deeper, asshole. God damn.
The bus arrives at George Mason University, where Students for Justice in Palestine is holding its national conference. But the protesters can't find the conference hall.
They just pull over and ask, hey, where are all the jihadis?
The driver sees 2 students and stops to ask directions. One is wearing a headscarf.
Oh, no. Come on. We're like, back to DC! Back to DC! I believe the comments said.
Okay.
No.
Excuse me? Do you know where the Johnson Center is? Okay, just go back.
No one knows they're being recorded. No.
Okay, thank you.
The journalist is undercover.
So this is off to a good start.
Students for Justice in Palestine really is a student-led type of organization focused around promoting the BDS cause. We have workshops on how to run our divestment campaign, finding intersections on campus, building alliances. Right now, Palestine has been essentially normalized on campuses.
The bus finally arrives.
Jen.
Noah Pollock's protest is not a student event. To avoid breaking university regulations.
Sorry, I'm trying not to interrupt this, but I'm like so fixated on this. JC Denton, I don't listen to this guy's pod, really. Did anyone hold him accountable for his paid protesting? I don't think anyone on the left is gonna, there's no one who's watched The Lobby and also watches The Realignment. This is like a very narrow Venn diagram. Like, this stream might be the only thing that is taking in information from both of those mutually exclusive echo chambers. I'm gonna search it in another tab. It's kind of wild. That's not what I expected. Okay, I'm searching it in the other tab. I'll mute myself.
He's arranged a legal briefing.
The SGP conference is on the 3rd floor, and we're going to go up and in a respectful and quiet way protest them. Yael is a legal expert and is going to talk a little bit about that.
We are here, of course, as guests of the university. So we don't want to be accused of disrupting a school-sponsored activity. It is against the law to use abusive or violent language. So we're going to use peaceful, good language. If we see that they're doing anything that is bad behavior, don't engage, remain calm. If you do happen to speak with any reporters, just stay on message. And what is that message? SJP is a hate group. BDS is a hate movement. The only other thing you probably want to mention is that SJP endorses violence, terrorism, things like that. And you guys are going to be great.
We're not there to provoke. We're not there to have any sort of incident at all. We're nice people.
Tony's group of protesters then faced another obstacle.
Wow, I don't know if you guys heard we were stuck in an elevator.
Yeah, I really like the area.
With all the signs.
They shut us in an elevator.
They had someone on the inside.
That's anti-Semites.
We start seeing groups of people coming towards us who don't seem familiar, and then brandishing Israel flags and then posters and signs.
We have our people. Freed from the elevator, Tony joined the demonstration.
No. We support democratic society, but if you don't want to, we denounce extremist groups. SJP, what do you think of this?
You agree? Resistance? Child suicide bombers?
How do you respond to such a wild accusation that's not grounded in anything and that's just designed to shift attention? Oh wait, we support suicide bombers. That's ridiculous.
Before that,
social justice left supports radical terrorism.
You don't want dialogue? We're here to talk to you. Turn your back.
You'd think if like they were gonna do it, they'd try to shake it up and mix it up with new accusations.
We don't support radical Islamic terrorism in this country. We don't support suicide bombers. Cowards who kill children and women. They leave orphans. We don't support that.
Kill babies in strollers. That'll bring peace. Yeah, Palestinian terrorists all over Israel. That would be it.
Real baby killers, these terrorists. They kill women, they kill children, they don't care about anything.
Rape women too, all the time.
It takes a lot to hear this and not respond, and to turn your back to them and to not look back at them.
Thank you, SJP. Good luck with your jihad.
They were very frustrated at the fact that we weren't responding. They're saying, they're not even responding. They're not even responding.
Yeah, look at how they wave a Palestinian flag at our country. Look at this. Despicable. These are the real basket of deplorables. These are the deplorables, people. They cower behind radical Islamism. They don't engage in dialogue because they can't win the war of ideas.
There's no responding to our content, because there is no refuting our content. Our content is grounded in human rights, morality, ethics, international law.
The staged protest had minimal impact on the students at George Mason University. But the headlines shared on social media tell the story Pollock wanted.
Yeah, let's head back to headquarters for debriefing and cocktails.
In part 2, a looming crisis for the lobby.
AIPAC is not representative of the American Jewish community.
There used to be actually widespread public support for Israel in the United States. The foundation that AIPAC sat on is rotting.
In part 1, how support for Israel is falling amongst the young.
It's a bad situation. The majority is more favorable towards the Palestinians than the Israelis.
Child suicide bombers?
And the lobby's support on campus isn't always what it seems.
Or these like traitors who sold out to the Jewish conspiracy for money. I'm like, we did. We cost $50,000 plus benefits.
Tony went to see his boss at the Israel Project, which is
I don't
known
know
as
if you come
TIP,
back from that.
for brunch. Eric told him why Jerusalem is a favorite hub for journalists covering the Middle East.
One of the reasons why Israel's covered disproportionately is the overwhelming majority of journalists covering the Middle East are based in Jerusalem. Jerusalem is a place where, after your 4 o'clock deadline, you can get drunk at a bar and meet people for a little bit.
TIP is laying the groundwork in the media for a future war between Israel and Hezbollah.
We're preparing for the worst case scenario. If it happens, we have to be ready because that war will be won and lost, the court of public opinion, not the battlefield.
Journalists based in Jerusalem would likely cover that war. The Israel Project has an office there.
We have an enormous interest in affecting the people who are on the ground there, and that's what they do. They build relationships with people who give them information that they can then feed to journalists who we're building relationships with. And so Lure is a staff of about like 20 people. He was chief of staff at the Israeli embassy in D.C. for many years. He's a veteran of Israeli politics, but he was like spokesman for a bunch of government ministries. So he's got a real expertise in dealing with the press. He's an expert at making their jobs easier. So, for instance, we actually now, when there's a terror attack in Israel, our staff gets to the scene usually before the press does. Just because Lure is so good. They bulletproof vests on, they have cameras, and as soon as there's a Twitter an attack, we have like 4 guys at the scene.
Breaking news overseas, a shooting in the heart of Tel Aviv.
He has this rapid response team where he has people strategically placed around the country. So if there's an attack, like the Sorona attack in Sorona Market in Tel Aviv.
Clearly an attack on a soft target right now based on all the initial preliminary details we're getting from this very fast developing story.
They take pictures and they get testimonies. By the time the press gets there, we do their jobs for them. They need quote, they need information, they need a picture, a video clip, and full service, shot. We just give them.
This is new video that just came in, and it shows people in the chaos after this happened, as it is night in Tel Aviv.
By the time the press got there, we were able to help affect the narrative because, they're all scrambling. They need to get stuff to their editors immediately on what happened back in Brussels or Washington, and we're able to get them information.
A TIP employee was interviewed by Fox News.
Liat Delongovitz, who is live with us on the scene, works for the Israeli Project, which puts out news to the foreign press there.
Hi, I'm here on the scene. I arrived fairly early.
They use children to protect.
The former CNN correspondent, Jim Clancy, first reported on the Middle East in the early 1980s.
Those boundaries. When TIP begins interacting with journalists and suggesting the lines and suggesting the interviews, then it's not journalism anymore, it's just propaganda.
Liat Delongovitz, who is on scene, again, works for the Israel Project, which works to put news out to the foreign press.
During his volunteership at the Israel Project, Tony saw a letter to a donor explaining how TIP had assisted a journalist from CNN. TIP took Will Ripley on a helicopter tour, which seemingly impressed the reporter.
Once you arrive in Israel, they come up with a series of things. They know you're in town. They have your number. You get the helicopter tour. That's fun. You get some video that you can use in your reporting. And then they sponsor trips like this one with special access to people that they know, and they can set it up.
I visited the Israeli side of the border with Gaza and can tell you the tension there is palpable. Hamas leaders have stated that they are aggressively expanding their underground labyrinth of tunnels.
This won't help.
The safe room won't protect you from a tunnel attack.
Not from that.
It's a very compelling report, but it's based on an absolute lie.
And there are even reports from some residents they are hearing digging underground.
The premise of the report is that Palestinians are digging tunnels in order to come up into the bedrooms of Israeli children and to kidnap them or kill them or terrorize them.
The document Tony saw claimed the TIP's influence created one of the fairest reports on Israel shown recently on a major broadcaster.
For those living close to Gaza, it seems only a matter of time before it happens again.
It keeps me awake at night.
There isn't one recorded case of these tunnels being used to attack Israeli civilians.
The report was presented solely from one side.
The Israel Defense Forces say the average Hamas tunnel is 3 kilometers, nearly 2 miles, costing millions of dollars and tons of valuable concrete, resources badly needed by the long-suffering people of Gaza to rebuild their cities.
TIP fully knows that if you're the journalist in Gaza who's doing a report with Hamas sources, your office is damn well going to require that you put in an Israeli voice to counter some of the things that are said there. They well know that if you are on the Israeli side doing a report with mostly Israeli sources, that same pressure will not be applied. You will be allowed to go ahead without trying to get the other side of the story.
Why is that?
That's because TIP is powerful, and they're going to hold journalists to account.
Dedicated to changing people's minds.
TIP's promotional video explains its role.
We don't attack the media. We become a trusted partner and resource, bringing integrity and facts to the coverage.
After an exchange of tweets concerning the Charlie Hebdo attacks in 2015, Clancy left CNN. He is unable to discuss his departure for legal reasons, but recalled instances when the pro-Israeli lobby exerted influence.
The big media companies will tell you that, well, maybe they won't tell you this, but they have been harassed. If they had Palestinian journalists who knew the ins and outs of the Palestinian Authority, for example, they were blatantly told to get rid of them, that they weren't trustworthy journalists. Whatever a journalist reports, if it's not liked by whether it's TIP or people within the government, they will put pressure on the media houses, the big networks.
TIP's online promotion claims it shapes the way Israel is framed in the international media.
TIP changes the way thousands of media reports appear every year. And then we add platforms of our own, getting people talking, taking command of the conversation.
This last week, but when I was there, I met with both Herzog and Netanyahu. We exist to kind of articulate the reasons that the notion of a Jewish state is a good thing for us as Americans, and it's a good thing for Jews, and a good thing for Israel, and a good thing for the West, and a good thing for everybody.
Block describes the pro-Israel lobby as a three-legged stool, propped up by influencing Congress, shaping policy through think tanks, and thirdly, TIP's role, managing the public discourse.
You've got the lobbying and the politics, and you've got the ideas and think tanks, but you can't define the meaning of those ideas. Other people are doing it for you, then the third leg of the stool isn't there and it falls over.
He's brilliant in like a mad scientist sort of way. He was the APAC spokesman, and he was like the troublemaker. He's always breaking the rules, but always getting done. He's very effective at strategic communications and dealing with journalists. At APAC, he was the man. I mean, he could get anything on the front page of the Washington Post.
The most effective thing you can do in Washington is both explain your point of view and explain why other people disagree with it. Everybody knows that people come with perspectives. Reporters and people, we live in a sophisticated world. But the question is, are you credible?
The Israel Project gained notoriety in 2009 after an internal policy document was leaked. It was a phrase book for pro-Israel advocates. Key phrases, words that work, were determined from focus groups.
Israel wants peace. I want peace.
We want to move forward in peace. We want to start negotiations immediately.
The Israeli Defense Forces acted against the launching of rockets by terrorists.
They are shooting at our children, at our mothers, at our civilians. What for?
Stuff that's data-driven. We do a lot of polling. Every month we do a national poll, exactly looking for these kinds of messages that work. We know that people recognize mostly from headlines. So the headlines are very, very carefully messaged.
If all Palestinians can be referred to as terrorists, as in a terrorist attack, they've won a battle. They've won a battle because that headline will be seen by probably 50 times more people than those who actually went into the article and read the details about it.
You don't have any reporters, just have three people who churn out carefully crafted headlines with article text that convinces you that the headline is true.
they understand that it's just the 5-word headline or the 6-word headline that carries the message. The point is never to get to the real debate.
Why is Iran so happy about the Iran nuclear deal?
Tip's social
What the
media
hell
videos
is
had
this?
apparently shifted public opinion on the Iran nuclear deal.
The American public started out being in favor of the deal and is now against the deal. It was everything from viral videos, 10-second videos. You can send me the greatest article you want about the Iran deal, but I promise you that a 10-second video will get 1,000 times.
People aren't reading as much. They're not interested. In fact, history's a little bit bunk. A lot of people kind of come up now and there's this notion of postmodernism and nothing is true anymore. We are at this sort of interesting moment in time where we need to understand what it is that affects people's understanding and perceptions about what's right and what's wrong and how they work. This visual stimulus and stuff. How are people learning things?
During his volunteership, Tony read an annual report to TIP's board of directors. It lauded their social
Some of
media
these
coverage
clips.
of the 2016 shooting at
Good
Sarona
God.
Market in Tel Aviv. It said TIP's video was the most watched
Glad he's dunking
online
on
content about
postmodernism,
the
at least.
attack. The video claimed to show Palestinians celebrating the killing of Israelis, something the mainstream media overlooked. But this was not true. This image was taken in Ramallah 2 years earlier.
There are also other things that we do that are completely off the radar. When we work together with a lot of other organizations, we produce content that they then publish with their own main army.
The Israel Project is supplying what it calls white label, that is unbranded content, to other outlets.
We're putting together a lot of pro-Israel media through various social media channels that aren't the Israel Project's channel. So we have a lot of side projects that we're trying to influence the public debate with. So that's why it's a secretive thing, because we don't want people to know that these side projects are associated with the Israel Project.
TIP runs a collection of Facebook communities that cover topics ranging from history and the environment to current affairs and feminism. But their affiliations to the Israel Project are deliberately vague.
Why is it that they can't be connected to the Israel Project? I think it's because, we want to be people to view them as objectively as possible. We have a team of 13 people, and we're working on a lot of videos, explainers. A lot of it is just random topics, and then maybe 25% of it would be Israel or Jewish based.
The Israel brand is increasingly toxic. So you can't sell Israel directly. You have to have sort of other hip stuff that's just very innocuous, fun, and then from time to time you're going to slip something about Israel in.
Fuck, sorry, I'm muted. I was gonna say that the amount of writing I've done about mimetic tactics, specifically the slow red pill of flooding the zone with normie content and then strategically, incrementally introducing the extreme stuff, every week or every month or so, and then you ramp it up slowly, it's amazing. Essentially what they're talking about here is mimetic warfare, right? They're literally content creators. They're small groups of people, 13 people. That's a group chat. They're making videos and memes together, and they're just deploying the effective strategies. I mean, I know I'm muted. I'm not muted anymore, but it's in, at least, you know what? At least it's validating that like that method of wielding influence is meaningful and effective. If only you could get paid to make memes for people who actually had worthwhile beliefs, but goddamn.
Is the idea that all the rest of the non-Israel stuff is to allow the Israel stuff to pass better? Like, that's the key thing?
Just that we want to like blend in everything.
Yeah, they'll alienate people if it's 100%.
Any mention of apartheid and occupation. Don't look here, look over here.
The visual medium is trumping words. More image, more visual, more accessible, non-heavy thinking stuff.
Kittens are easy to sell. Apartheid is a much harder product to get people to buy.
More and more people will use the word apartheid when they talk about Israel. The end result is that the lobby has to work extremely hard today and will have to work even harder over time to defend Israel. And of course, in part, this means doing everything that can be done here in the United States.
Bro, they like just did this the other day.
The BDS movement, because the BDS movement
did y'all see this post?
To Israel.
Oh man.
Tony had gathered that the lobby's concern with BDS was not its economic impact, but a much wider threat to the power of the pro-Israel lobby.
The specific potential of an immediate boycott, that's not a problem. It's a bigger problem is the Democratic Party, the Bernie Sanders people, bringing all these anti-Israel people in the Democratic Party.
Oh, of course, it's the Bernie Sanders people. Of course, we're the real problem. Oh, god damn it.
Policies towards Israel change, and that becomes a dangerous thing for Israel.
This is killing me, dude.
An actually important battle being fought on the campuses.
For half a century, bipartisanship has been the cornerstone of AIPAC's success, as its website video explains.
By some
This
measures,
is the post from
Democrats and
like, I don't know,
Republicans are more
yesterday.
divided today than at any other time in the last 2 decades.
That's the strategy.
But America's support for Israel transcends partisan politics. So when it comes to strengthening America's relationship with Israel, support must come from both sides of the aisle. That's where AIPAC comes in.
What's begun to happen over the past decade is that support for Israel has begun to wither away in the Democratic Party. And in contrast, support for Israel in the Republican Party has begun to increase. And what you see is there is a substantial difference today in support for Israel in the two parties.
AIPAC has moved so far to the right that it's losing the young people. By the time of the next presidential election, Democrats will not glibly, in a debate, say they're running for president, and I love Israel, and I'm a diehard supporter of Israel. The terrain has...
That shit is fucking wrong. They did this in 2016. This was filmed in 2016, completed in 2017. 2020, they were still saying that shit. They are saying that shit now. They said that like 2 weeks ago. Give me a break. Okay. Sorry, bro, but that's just not, your timeline is a little too, it's a little too narrow. You got to extend that by like another 4 to 8 years or something.
Dramatically.
If you look at the changing demographics in the United States and what people's views are towards Israel and Israel's policies, it's only a matter of time before that trickles up to elected officials. I think it's inevitable.
It's a bad talking point. That is a bad. That is a bad.
Is the one that.
That is. Oh, that's a bad. I have to stop talking over this. That is a bad talking point.
It happened over.
Don't link it to
marriage.
demographic shift.
You know, it was only
demographics
a short
doesn't matter.
few years
The
ago
ethics and the morality
that
is what matters.
High majorities in the United States were opposed to same-sex marriage.
Because when you describe it as being a product, that the consensus opinion is a product of the demographic shift, you are again falling into the Israeli trap that people have a racial affiliation to a state. Those are, they have an ethnic affiliation to a state. Those are different things. The demographics don't matter. The moral and ethical debate is what is being won. Those are the terms upon which it's decided. And that doesn't matter about the demographics. There's no demographic support for the whole point of this documentary is that there's not broad consensus popular support for Israel, and that's why there's so much money that has to go to these organizations to wield influence, and they have to bus people into the protest. They should have cut that line from the documentary. That was bad. That should have been excluded because it is antithetical to the thesis of this program. I'm getting a little worked up. Okay.
That change happened within the space of a decade. The Israel lobby will look at something like that and say it wouldn't take much for that kind of historic sea change to happen with respect for US support for Israel.
Outside AIPAC's 2017 annual conference, the first protesters were American Jews. AIPAC is facing a challenge from the constituency whose views it was formed to represent.
AIPAC does not represent the American Jewish community. A majority of American Jews are opposed to the policies of the State of Israel.
You do not represent the best of the Jewish prophetic tradition, and we here to bear witness to
Our future president.
One of the groups involved was Jewish Voice for Peace.
The work that Jewish Voice for Peace does is grounded in Jewish tradition, the most basic Jewish and human values that every single person has inherent worth and dignity and should be treated with respect. We then see what's happening to Palestinians, the occupation, the displacement, the inequality, and say we need to end those things.
Or that they must attend.
Yeah, they're all crazy liberals. And as far as I'm concerned, American Jews had one job, which was to preserve Jewish identity from one generation to the next. They failed. So I don't think they have any place to be telling Israel what's what. And if they choose to stop giving money to Israel, Israel will find money elsewhere.
Where?
There were few pro-Israel
Where would
demonstrators.
they find them? What?
Most wanted to project their strength through Israel's relationship with the United States.
Who's going to give them $38 billion?
The Jewish Defense League, with its distinctive yellow insignias, was a small but threatening presence. Its members later attacked a Palestinian-American man.
There's all sorts of survey data. For American Jews under the age of 30, only 32% said that a close attachment to Israel was important to them in terms of what it meant to be Jewish. The more and more young American Jews become aware of what the Israelis are doing to the Palestinians and how indefensible that is, at least in terms of Western values, the more difficult it will be to get those younger American Jews to feel a deep commitment to the State of Israel.
I can't breathe! I can't go!
American Jews are even taking their protest to Jerusalem. The Israeli government official who launched a covert campaign to spy on American citizens recognizes that Israel is facing a generational time bomb.
אנחנו היום, לא רק שאיבדנו את הדור השני של היהודים, שזה דור המילניום של היהודים, אני שומעת את זה מההורים שלהם שבאים להיפגש איתי ומסבירים לי כמה קשה להם בארוחות שישי מול הילדים שלהם. שלא מכירים במדינת ישראל ולא רואים בנו איזה אנטיטי שצריך להריץ אותו.
During Tony's volunteership at TIP, his supervisor Eric said he's looking to a future when the pro-Israel lobby will be unable to rely on AIPAC's influence in Congress. He said they faced a major challenge and a big bowling ball was being hurled towards them. They needed to get on the bowling ball and start dancing.
You can prove that AIPAC is suffering from some of the trends in public opinion that are affecting the Democratic Party. AIPAC's supply, it's slipping very, very quickly among Democrats. They're not going to be able to maintain the bipartisan support. So I always say that the foundation that AIPAC sat on is rotting. And there used to be actually widespread public support for Israel in the United States. And so I don't think that AIPAC is going to remain as influential as it is. I don't think AIPAC's the tip of the spear anymore, which is worrisome because who is?
Wow. This was heavy stream. Okay, we're winding down here. We'll see if there's any conclusion different than the other episodes. I think we've watched these closing credits before.
Just know I have total faith in you. I hope it's not the last time we work together. Full disclosure, I would love it if you came to work for me. I need someone who is like a team player, hardworking, excited, passionate, curious, well-rounded, well-spoken, well-written. You're all of those things.
Tony did, okay, yeah, because Tony didn't take the job. Wow, holy shit. Okay, I want to just very briefly respond to something in the chat from Mr. Sam Salisbury. And Sam writes, the doc is a few years old, kind of thinking this lobby is becoming less successful by the day. Even BDS isn't driving the movement away from Israel we're seeing today. The new media, parentheses, social, is working much more effectively. That shares something with demographic differences. This came up on the previous stream. I think everyone would agree that the Israel lobby is not working as effectively as it had in the past, but the thing that is of note here is that it has worked incredibly effectively, because this has been a 60-year occupation. So the thing that we're trying to unravel here is how it was allowed to continue for so many decades, and how they had such incredible sway over the American consensus perspective on the conflict. So yeah, I mean, obviously, I think we've said it in the chat and we've said it on the previous streams, but public sentiment is shifting. That's generationally evident. It's also just, I mean, the number of casualties is like the amount of violence, particularly in the last year, is reaching a level that it's kind of hard to ignore. You know, even people who had a very comfortable boomer life and have unconditional support for Israel are, I think, becoming increasingly worried about the disproportionate amount of force, the collective punishment that's happening now. It's deeply demoralizing. Yeah, but the thing to question is, how did it continue for so long? Obviously, it's losing influence now, but it was incredibly influential for many years. The last thread that we haven't exactly tied up, I just grabbed a few of these links from picking up on Marshall Kosloff from the Realignment podcast. Apparently I'm just grabbing all of the links that I had in the alternate tab over here. There's a few things from like Reddit. Some of these are just like message boards. Some of them are articles. Some of them's a Medium post. I think there's violence on this page, so we might have to This is from Our Palestine. And it's a clip of the documentary, actually. So people have noticed this. I did not find any statement from Marshall himself about it. The only thing that I pulled up, just very briefly, was his statement that Hamas is terrible or whatever, and this is from October 9th. But he hasn't. I don't know. That would seem like, for me, if I was a political pundit, incredibly embarrassing to be a paid protester at a think tank. Even just, let's just say, like, he's a conservative, he's working for the Hoover Institute, he's an intern, or he's like some low-level admin or whatever. It's his first job out of college, who knows. Let's just say that's your political alignment. That's fine. That could be it. But the idea that you would show up and be a paid protester, criticize the astroturfing, then go along with it just seems like, really, really grotesque. Anything else especially important to note here? This is from Our Palestine. We'll just read some of these. Pro-Israel advocates on paid fellowship from the conservative Hoover Institution are bused to a pro-Palestine protest. It's ironic because this is the conservative argument that the liberals are busing in paid protesters for everything. And then there's something in this thread that mentions Marshall Kosloff, conservative operative, Rising, The Hills, Crystal Ball, Sagar and Jetty. I'm tempted. This is the one thing I'll say, and then we'll close out the stream. I'm tempted to give him the benefit of the doubt in relation to whether he is a long-term, like, Hoover operative, because I think a big point of the so-called realignment podcast is a kind of rethinking from the right about economic policy and breaking with the neoliberal consensus. So, we've watched it on this stream because we watch everything from all over the entire spectrum. I don't take Marshall's positions as doctrine. I disagree with him on most things, but in terms of mapping the political landscape, it is incredibly important to take in sources from all over. So it would stand to reason that if he was a, right-leaning neoliberal person shortly after college and then kind of broke with that, thought that even from the perspective of the right, you would want to have state direction of the economy and specifically industrial policy or so on and so forth. Conceivably, that could all check out. But the idea of showing up to be a paid protester for an apartheid state is just, oh my God, grotesque. How can you? Doesn't matter if you roast yourself on the bus on the way there, you're still fucking doing it, man. Have some self-respect. God damn. Okay, whatever. Okay, we've gone through. We're definitely not reading the Red Scare Reddits. These are just a whole bunch of Medium, different articles, things trying to find any statement from Marshall about the thing in the lobby, which were unsuccessful otherwise. Okay, I think that brings us through all of tonight's program. Maybe we'll close out with this tweet that I think... Shit, is my connection breaking down? Chat is reloading. I can't tell if I just got disconnected. Maybe we'll see. Well, let me know in chat if I got disconnected. Maybe I'll refresh the window for a second here. If we're still online, then I'll just read this tweet before we close out the stream. In order to make the debate with boy wonder Ben Shapiro fair, I herewith declare that so long as I get equal time, he can bring along Jordan Peterson and I don't even know who this person is. Okay, anyway, so if Norman Finkelstein debates Ben Shapiro, I would love to see that, and we'll definitely watch it on the stream. Thanks everybody for watching tonight. I will upload this to YouTube. A few people requested putting the stream onto YouTube, archiving these past few. Maybe we'll continue to do that. Makes it accessible to people. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week.